Hello everyone, welcome back to Conversations Unplugged with Raisin. This is where we sit down with changemakers, thinkers, and everyday heroes to uncover stories that challenge norms and open new doors of thoughts. Today we are diving into the world of law, leadership, and community change, with spotlight on how grassroots education movement can shift the trajectory of young lives. Join me as Rhea and Ayush, founders of Project Maargam, a completely volunteer-run non-profit in Bangalore that quietly transforming futures through mentorship, skill building, and a strong belief in student agency. Rhea is a lawyer and educator. Ayush is a consultant with KPMG with a background in law and serious passion for social impact. Hi guys, how are you guys doing? And thank you for coming in such a short notice. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us. It's lovely being here.
Thank you.
And before we start the whole conversation, I would request you guys to please subscribe to my YouTube channel and do hit that bell icon. So let's unplug and let's get started. So my first question is, what led you both coming from law consulting to start project like Maargam?
So Rhea did the Teach for India fellowship, right? And both of us know each other from law school. And I used to volunteer as a teacher, would work with small groups of 5 to 10 students on the weekends. And I've figured that a lot of my students were really not aware of everything that would be required of them at their learning levels or their grades. So it could be that an 7th or 8th standard student would not know how to read and write beyond 4 or 5 letter words. And as you went older, the problem got a lot more serious. You had 10th graders who were completely clueless as to what they were going to do in their 11th and 12th. Nobody was really bothered about their career. And this is something that we noticed in a lot of low income schools in the area, and which is when I shared this concern with Rhea. And then with her background in grassroots education, she said that, okay, why don't we do something about it? This is something we have, both of us have time on our hands, and we see that there is a real problem, there's a real gap that somebody has to bridge. I mean, there are people coming out with say social entrepreneurship efforts. There are people doing mentorship programs everywhere, but there's nothing happening here for our students in this community. So why don't we do something about it? And
There is a problem like where people are not, the kids are not able to learn. But what is the reason they are not? Is that lack of teachers, or what is the issue? Why they are not able to learn, or they are not able to cope up with the studies?
right. So when you take stock of the population that we work with, whether it's students or even students in my experience is in the communities that we are present in. If you look at students in general or the students that we work with, all of them are first generation learners, right? None of their parents or anybody before their parents have finished high school. So there is a clear problem where they have nobody to look up to. So say somebody who wants to be a doctor or an engineer, or anybody who wants to follow your conventional profession really has nobody to look up to, nobody to ask for advice, and really no source of motivation, because all of them, they see a lot of crime around them. They see a lot of illegal activities, right from drug peddling to more serious offenses happening as soon as sundown in the community. And everyone is really bothered about how they can make a quick buck doing all of these activities and not really pursuing paths like education or conventional careers, because they're not really rewarding. So we sort of decided that, okay, why don't we facilitate a platform where we or people we know, friends of ours, can play the roles of these mentors, because there aren't any mentors. So we really need to create those mentors who can, who our students can look up to.
When we first started, we didn't have an idea. We had an intuitive sense of what the problem was, which is underexposure in the community, right? Underexposure in terms of the lack of agency to make informed decisions. Yes, the information is available on the internet, but do they have the agency to check the right places, or do they feel like they need to do those things, right? And are there role models for people to look up to? These are gaps that we identified before even doing our preliminary sort of research, right? And then we kind of really got down to it. We'd had some focus groups, we had conversations with other social entrepreneurs, in the space. We spoke to people running community centers, people who worked in the same community before. And those people gave us insights into what works, what doesn't, and where in reality is the gap, right? We had an intuitive sense of it, but what is actually the gap from their experiences? And that is what actually then became our project. And that's what, like, in our pilot, which we just completed, that's what kind of gave shape to it. And initially, we were thinking which age group to work with. Should we start from 8th grade onwards? Should we start from 10th? Should we start 11th and 12th? What should we do? And after all of this, we came to the conclusion that career is a pain point for 11th and 12th graders. And so that's why our program, the core part of the program, we do have many other auxiliary bits, but the core part of the program is tailored towards 11th and 12th graders in the community, in our pilot, right? Of course, we have learnings from that, but our pilot basically focused on ensuring that these 11th and 12th graders are able to make informed choices. They have the skills that they need to be confident, 21st century skills like public speaking, communication, digital literacy, and so on. And they are also able to find these role models. And we are the bridge basically that gives them all of this.
So moving on, was there a story that made you feel that this work was absolutely necessary? Is there any story, or how did you get inspired? What was the light, or what was the fire that kindled the whole project?
I wouldn't call it a fire, maybe a spark. Right. So sometime in mid to late 2023, when I started working with Teach for India, that's when we did the preliminary research and laid the groundwork for the whole project. By the way, I had this student who was in his 7th or 8th standard, and I was teaching him how to read and write. Basically, I was helping him improve his reading comprehension. And while writing some answer, he asked me the spelling of clock. And then I told him the spelling. Then he asked me the spelling of this, and it got simpler as it went. He asked me the spelling of it. Then I just, after class, I sat down with him. He was in his 7th grade at that time, so which was really shocking to me. So after I came to terms with the fact that I would have to teach him everything in the English alphabet, I sort of sat down and had a conversation with him. Like, okay, what is your scene? What is happening? What will you do when you're grown up? And man had no idea. So, but then I figured out that and I asked him, what are your classmates going to do? So he told me, oh no, even they haven't really thought about it. And I looked back to my childhood, maybe even I had not thought about it at that age. So I asked Rhea, who was, teaching in that school, what are the older students like? What do they think? Are they worried about career? Because things like job, career, earning, supporting their family are not really pain points for your 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds. But what about the 10th graders, 11th graders who are about to, finish their school education? So we decided maybe the best way to go about this to know is to talk to students themselves. And then we set out talking to students of that age group in from the.
So this was the only story, or you have any other story like which you had the similar experience?
There was this one student that really kind of, I think this was maybe that gave us a lot of passion to continue what we were doing and gave us sort of a direction. And this was a student who had a vision for her future, wanted to achieve amazing things, had great ambitions. However, and I'll tell you what the ambition was. So I'll call her Pavana. So Pavana was a student who loved the idea of becoming an IPS officer. She wanted this for herself because her mother wanted to become a police officer, but she was not allowed to, and she was married off at a young age. And so her
Was it a
I
legal
don't
issue?
remember.
Okay.
but but she was married off, and her mother had this ambition. And I think from a young age, Pavna grew up hearing this story from her mother, and so she had this inner sort of passion to, yes, I want to become an IPS officer. I will show my parents, my family, my community what I can do. And so she had this fire in her. And when we started asking her questions that were a little deeper, why? What was beyond the passion? What do you think you're going to do in that role? Or what is the exam that you have to write to become an IPS officer, right? These are questions she didn't have an answer to. She, at that point, she had some idea that you have to write some exam, but she didn't know, should it be done after bachelor's? Is it, what is the structure? Is there a training? Do I directly become an IPS officer? Are there levels? Are there other kinds of, hierarchies in after you write your UPSC? She had no clue about these things. But she was in her 12th grade, or she was going to enter her 12th grade, and she was fully clear that she wanted to do this, but she had no idea of anything related to what she wanted to do and what skills she needed to build in order to actually crack this exam. And how hard it actually is, right? So the reality and where Pavana was had no connection. And so what we wanted to do at that point is build.
So you're just bridging that connection, like, okay,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And we did that through skill building workshops we did on weekends. And we also did that through people who could be role models, who could fill that gap, who could tell them where to search, what to search, even what kind of things do you need. And if for example there are hundreds of people, thousands of people doing UPSC, but there's very few people who crack that exam. So what is the hard reality of these people who are doing it, and what were the gaps that they themselves faced, what were the challenges that they faced? So, and in this community there was absolutely no one for Pavana to look up to, but we our intention was to find these people, and we did that in the first year in our pilot through personal connections, um, leveraging our network, right? But now, after 1 year of our pilot, we have got applications. We get through our website, through our Instagram. People are applying to become mentors, to become volunteers, intern with us, and so we've seen that shift.
When you were narrating the story, I thought about the 12th fail, that movie. If you guys have watched it,
Yes.
yeah, that's what connected me. And do you think, okay, that's a hard fact actually right now also still in all parts of our country, or it's just like, okay, sell it as, like, have you traveled the whole India, or it's just like your focus is just Bangalore at present?
Just these few communities that we are currently working in. So I've not watched 12th Fail actually. I don't know
Even
what
I've
happens in
not
the
watched it, but I
movie.
know the premise, basically. But if you want,
Inspired me to, like, okay, wow, the struggle that people go through to even just like clear an exam.
yeah.
So moving on, once a student enrolls to your project, what happens next?
Oh, the student-led aspect of our project or our first, pilot program was where our students split themselves into groups, just open discussions with the students. We asked them, "What do you think is wrong with the society?" So, or and all of them had different problems that they needed to address. So, a student of ours told us that it's not safe for me or my sister or my mother to walk around in the community after 5:30. And last week, I heard that a girl was abducted from 2 streets away from my house. So I need to do something about it. But somebody else told me, "Oh, there is garbage in front of my house, and they're not clearing it. I don't know who to call." Then somebody told me that my brother is working with on a delivery platform, and he was working for a while. Now he has been unemployed. He does not have a regular source of income. Really need him to need to do something to educate him about his rights. So there were, and then a lot of people said that we have literate persons in the community who are taking advantage of members of the community who are not able to read and write. So I wish I could teach them to read and write. So these are all problems that they were passionate about, and they took initiatives on their own to do something about it. So it needn't be something that completely eliminates or solves the problem, but the students themselves have to learn how to work in a team and start somewhere. So we sort of were able to make them understand that it's not about creating change right away, but it's about doing something, and it's about working together, and it's about having that feeling of togetherness for the community. So that's the student led aspect. And you want to take the other part? What happens when somebody signs up?
So in our pilot, we wanted to keep it as open as possible. We didn't have a sort of academic benchmark that we used. We wanted to, since it was the pilot, we wanted to experiment what it's like to work with all sort of rigor levels in students. So how we kind of started the project was we identified the community center that we wanted to work with. And they had very deep ties with the community through a lot of different means. And they had worked with these students before. Many of them school dropouts, but continued in NIOS education. Some of them, and all of them that we worked with were enrolled in PU colleges, but had previously maybe gone to government schools or low income private schools. And so this was a broad kind of demographic that we had. And all the students were put through a career exploration program where they had an initial spark of what they wanted to do. But over the course of a month or a month and a half, they actually came up with more solidified ideas of the path that they wanted to explore. Right. And the word Margam essentially means path. And so, um, they basically chose the path that they wanted to kind of enter. Many of them did take detours later on in the process. That's the intention that we go with, not that the path is fixed. Um, but once they enrolled, everyone is put through the skill building sessions in general, but there were also targeted sessions for each path. For example, some of the students wanted to do law, and so they had to write their CLAT exam. And so we had an accountability buddies program where psychology students of Christ University actually came, and they would do basically accountability setting, goal setting, all of this, but specific to the path that they had chosen. So there was, for the law, which I was speaking for, law students who I law aspirants who I was speaking about, they got CLAT training. They got training on how to prep. So an exam is divided into different parts. How do I prioritize? Things like that, tips on that. But different people had different sort of uh, tailored interventions. So there was the general skill building, then there were the tailored skill building interventions, and then there was also the mentorship, where an early career professional is connected with the person who wants to pursue that particular path. And this was all done on weekends, on Sundays. Uh, and finally, it all culminated in the community development project that Ayush was speaking about, where every student would be assigned a group. And in that team, they kind of decide what is the issue that I am really passionate about. And we did this in multiple ways, right? They had inherent things that they worried about every day, but they also did. We did community walks. We did a lot of design thinking processes. We did a little bit of very basic theory of change related work, and a lot of these thinking, like how do I come up with a solution, what kind of solutions do I come up with, project planning, all of this. And finally they ended up with some small micro interventions on how to solve this problem, and they worked together to actually solve it.
Thank you. That was really insightful. But now I want you to tell me, like, what happens. You guys are focusing 11th, 12th. Okay. What happens to the kids who are like 10th or 9th or 8th? There's right of education also, which you guys just spoke about. Like, not in front of the camera, but behind the camera. So I want you to tell me about what happens, dropouts, or are you just focusing on 11th and 12th grade, and why?
So 11th and 12th, because we were able to understand from speaking to students, teachers, and other people who worked in the community, that things like career, job, college were all pain points that plagued students in that age group. While if you were to support, say, students who were aged 13 or 14, it would really have to be very academic focused, or it would really have to be tuition, wherein after school I would have to go pick the student up from his house and then teach him to how to read, write, and do arithmetic. So, which is a little different from the support that we are offering. So when someone would really want to know what college should I go to, or how do I apply to a college, or how much will this job pay me, or how do I find internships. These are things that students typically tend to think about at that age, and which is where they did not have access to any support or anybody to turn to, because in the communities that we are present, there are tens of tuition centers that cater to the needs of students in that age group, say like 10 to 14 or 10 to 15. But beyond that, there was no support that was really being offered from any angle, or by any individual. So which is where we thought that there clearly is a gap and someone has to do something about it.
Got it. What happens to the dropouts?
What we do, unlike, there are other programs that incentivize using food, other programs give stipends. What we do is it's entirely program focused. The incentive is the program itself. If I want a student to come, I'm not trying to attract them by giving food or money. Instead, what I'm saying is my program has enough value in and of itself that you should want to come. And so there is a dropout rate, of course, there is attrition anywhere. And what we do in those cases of attrition is we try to make sure it's as less as possible through investment. We engage with the parents. We try to invest them into the idea of what we're trying to do and how it's going to benefit them in the long term. Why do you want to spend a Sunday afternoon in a class or in a workshop? You much rather want to play or do whatever you want, right? But why is it necessary to spend those 2 or 3 hours with us? So, of course, that long-term vision is something that we align with with the parents, but also the community. We make sure that we have members of the community who have strong ties within the community itself, who can pull the kids up and say, this is important for you, so you need to make it. Other ways that we do it is we make the program fun, we make it interesting, we have new people, we have variety, it's very activity based. And so people do they do have fun when they come in, and they do meet their friends, they do have those kind of things. So that is how we have curbed the dropout rate. How But there has been a certain amount of attrition which happens. There are children who, no matter what you do, are not interested. There's an intrinsic lack of motivation which we cannot help. But we knew that that is something that we'd have to deal with.
Moving to the legal aspect, I think that will be your favorite topic, one of the favorite topic, which is about red tape. So have you had to navigate red tape or systemic barriers while building the whole management, the program?
Not really. I mean, I wouldn't say that, because ours is a program that's not really dependent on, say, a government agency or any other public body, right? It's mostly just our group of volunteers who contribute, and the community centers that we work with. So there really hasn't been any sort of bureaucracy that we've had to deal with. But say, while approaching a government body, or a department of the government for certain tasks, we've faced a little bit of pushback, saying that they would not want to be involved in such a great degree. But that's just about it. I mean, the program itself is not very reliant on support from a public body. So
Got it. So can you share a story of a student or a project that really stayed with you, like during this whole pilot project?
I'll share. There was a student, I'll call him Rahul. So, Rahul was again very passionate about what he wanted to do, which was chartered accountancy. He had this idea that if I do CA, I will become rich. And that was the goal for him. It wasn't what a CA does. What does a CA do? No idea. But if I become a CA, I can now make money and I can pull my family out of poverty, which in itself is an absolutely great thing to have a vision about. So with Rahul, I saw that he was able to reach out to his mentor who we had connected. They had two mentors, one person who did ACCA, one person who did CA. Both of them had cracked both of those. But the person who had done ACCA had taken a totally different route, and not, the conventional route. And the person who was doing CA was very much following the conventional route. And this person, Rahul, was able to reach out to the mentors for a lot of other things that we had not even imagined. For example, he had a college project and he reached out to the mentor. He needed support with the CA foundation exam, which involves a law aspect, company law. And so he reached out again to the mentor. These are not things that are a part of our core program, but absolutely part of our vision, because we wanted to build connections with people who they could look up to as role models, who they could connect with, and then reach out for anything they wanted. And that's exactly what happened. So I think Rahul, for me, is a very sort of qualitative example of a success story, that we have built.
How about you, Ayush?
There was recently a mentor of ours who ran an AR VR lab at a university in Bangalore. So he, out of his own volition, he took around 5 to 6 of his students to just give them that experience of what it looks like, what how to work with AR tools. They put on those goggles, and so it was just for him. It was not about, say, professional or academic support. It was just a fun outing with the kids that he worked with, and there's a lot of informal bonding that happens with the mentors as well.
Yeah.
Somebody recently took his kids out for lunch, so
To
there's a,
make na biryani.
so there's a lot of bonding or friendship that happens. So, like, a lack of good friendships is something that we noticed in the community. Like, something that we mentioned earlier were, there were students who were getting into bad company and dropping out of school, or committing petty crimes, things like that. But they really did not have any strong bonds with people who you or I would consider normal, and which is something that we've thought was a little crazy, because and providing that access to, say, people who are your regular everyday normal people who do normal things and not crimes is something that we have been able to facilitate, which itself, I think, is something great.
Motivating and inspiring. So now, being a non-profit, you're run on with volunteer support. So I want to ask, like, to find volunteers, it's not easy. So how do you keep people engaged, and how do you manage burnout, and how do you keep them motivated to continue this project?
That's a very interesting question. I think we absolutely dealt with what you're speaking about: burnout, passion dwindling, people coming in and saying, yes, I want to volunteer, I want to do social work. And then at the end, when they realize, oh, shucks, this is actually really hard. You know, and now maybe I have college work, I have office work, I want to prioritize that. So we absolutely did face this, right? And when we initially had this vision of using volunteers, we thought we'll build a pool of volunteers who we can connect with whenever for any sort of project that we were running, any event. We could reach out to them and then they would kind of be with us. So it was like a long term sort of, if you join us, you stay with us. So that's the idea we initially had, but we quickly pivoted when we realized that there was absolutely a passion that was, dropping from our volunteer base. And we realized what we were doing was we were creating spaces for volunteers to interact with students, but we also had a lot of other transactional tasks. For example, social media, copywriting, maybe website and this and that. So there was a lot of other things, operations, calling people, coordination, logistics, all these things. These volunteers were not directly benefiting from the fulfillment aspect, right? So how do you get these people to continue doing what they need to be doing? And so we pivoted to a volunteer management structure, which is short term, one, and two, has very clear goals, both in terms of what we want from them and also in terms of what we will give them. as skills. So if you do X task, you build ABC skills, right? And that term is also very fixed. And so they know that there is an end goal. They know that at the end of 3 months or 1 month or 2 months, they have to do this, and this is what they're getting out of it. And that's their learning and development. So we started investing in the volunteers, in their journeys, mapping their career trajectories, asking them questions of how do you think this fits into your long term career, and where are you going to use the skills that you build here. So we totally changed our perspective of how to manage volunteers. And that I've absolutely seen a huge shift. So I would advocate that anyone running a volunteer, based anything, any event, you do this. You make sure that it's short term and there are very clear goals.
So pilot project is over. So what is the next step for Project Maargam? What is the way forward?
We are definitely going to be continuing with the program, and we have learnings from the pilot that we're going to implement and come out with a stronger program next year. And of course, our long term goal is to build role models in the community and take the community to a point where we don't really have to introduce outsiders as role models, where the next generation of learners can reach out to their own brothers and sisters, their older friends, just for advice, support, or if they just need someone to talk to, right? And our oldest batch of students have already started working as mentors and helping us find new learners in the community, and which I believe is a small win right at the outset, where we are able to create role models in the community.
And as we do this, we would like your viewers to be able to volunteer with us if they feel passionate about this initiative. If after watching this video, they feel like they would like to volunteer with us, work with our students, and be these, role models until we get to this point in our vision. I would love to share the link to our volunteering form in the description, and you can also read up about our website, which we'll also link.
Imagine this is a pitch and you have to pitch your volunteer why they should be part of Project Maargam. Why?
Okay, that's the question.
Yes, this is the question, but one sentence.
Got it. If you are a part of Project Margam, you get the chance to work with a team of committed, passionate people who are willing to go out of their means and do anything they can to make a community of leaders who have the agency to make their own informed decisions and solve their own problems.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot for doing this. And if there is one thing I'm taking away from this conversation, it's that real change often starts with two things: listening and showing up. And that's what exactly Margam is doing, offering not just guidance, but dignity and choice to students who often been denied both. Ayush and Rhea, thank you for being here. Thanks for the honest conversation that you had with me. And more importantly, thanks the work that you guys are doing. And also, if you want to listen to the more such sort of conversation, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and please do hit that bell icon.